Hello, my beautiful souls. Welcome to a new show on Living Naturally with Michaela Live, where we talk about all things about living a naturally healthy life. So, welcome back. I'm Michaela, your mind body connection specialist, and today's episode is a powerful one. It's all about sacred rituals for spring and how we can honor change and rebirth using both ancient wisdom and modern practices. So today I'm thrilled to welcome back Patricia Peters, modern shaman, holistic psychotherapist, and expert in ancient rituals and inner empowerment. So, Patricia, welcome again.
Hi, Michaela. Thank you so much for having me, and welcome to all the beautiful souls who are watching us.
Yes, I love our conversations. And for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, Patricia is one of my recurring guests, and you can catch us, having these great conversations every fourth Friday of the month is when I chat with Patricia. And usually we will talk about things, on the soul level and, all kinds of practices and stuff that we can incorporate for our daily lives. And this month I've been talking all about spring and because of the spring equinox. So it's a really good time for all that reset and change and everything. So let's start by looking at spring as more than just a season. It is, I lost my train of thought. See, this is what happens when you go on a live show. You never know what's going to happen. So let's start by looking at spring as more than the season. And I'm going to start with Patricia, and I'm going to ask this question. Why do traditional cultures place so much significance on spring?
Yeah, so the answer basically is pretty easy for most of the ancient traditions, at least in the European cultures. Spring equinox did not just mark the beginning of spring, but the beginning of the new year. Like even today in astrology, where when the sun moves into the sign of Aries, for the astrologers, it's the new astrological year because that goes back to ancient times.
Mhm.
So beginning of spring was beginning of a new year. And I mean, think of the ancient times, especially if you lived in the northern hemisphere or more up north. It was not a given that you survived winter.
Right.
So they really had a reason to celebrate like crazy the beginning of the new year. It was like a new life, a new year was given to them as a present,
Mm.
because winter was so hard. So they celebrated, and usually they celebrated with fires, with fire rituals, because fire related to the sun, light, and of course getting warmer, not freezing anymore or freezing to death, being able to cook the meals. So fire and the sun was very important for them. So they really honored and worshiped the sun and the fire, hence a lot of fire rituals, but not
Mhm.
just fire. There was also a lot of dancing and joyful. I mean, they celebrated life. They celebrated fertility, of course, spring, the season, new life, a birthing of new ideas, a new cycle. So everything basically is new chances. Forget the old stuff, forget what you suffered through in winter. So that was a huge meaning. And by the way, Christian religion, the early Christians, they took a lot of those rituals, implemented it into Easter. So basically, the way we celebrate Easter, a
Yeah.
lot of our Easter traditions go back to the spring equinox. So we don't celebrate spring equinox here, usually,
Right.
we celebrate Easter, and when you look into it, there is so much. Even the ancient goddess Ostara, So from her name, Ostara, she was the goddess of fertility and fruitful nature and stuff like that. From her name comes the name Easter, Eastern.
Mm,
No, so it's
awesome.
all, the ancient things show up in our times, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing and that knowledge and wisdom with us. I think that's a really good way for us to start this particular episode off is by understanding all the ancient rituals that kind of goes along with the whole spring equinox or
Mhm,
equinox, however you're going to pronounce it,
mhm,
um, and how those ancient rituals come forward in our modern times and how we do things, in modern day. And so I'd
mhm,
like to chat a little bit too about the power of seasonal alignment on the physical side of things, because you know me, I'm the one that's like it's all the connecting of the body and the mind and stuff,
mhm, mhm,
and that's why I enjoy having these conversations with you, because you too also do that. And so we come at it from different angles, but it's all still about that connectivity. And so some of what I would like to bring forward for people that are listening from the modern wellness standpoint is that the seasonal change, the things that are going on with this change in spring, although yes, it's like ancient, in the ancient times, it's like you celebrated surviving winter, and it's like things are changing, and it's like in the spring equinox, it's one of the other conversations I had with one of my other recurring guests was about how it also represents a balance, because it is the time of equal light and day, and so it's a good time for us to rebalance ourselves too.
mhm,
So I want to take this a little more and help people understand that how syncing with our seasonal change
mhm,
also can help our physical bodies as well, including our adrenal health,
mhm,
our mood, emotional health, and immune function. So,
mhm,
so let's touch on that a little bit. So I know, like from an adrenal health standpoint, more light and energy are ideal for gentle activation of the body after winter's slow rhythm, which you were talking a little bit about. And when we honor this shift, it helps us reduce stress on the adrenals, which helps to balance our cortisol levels. And we all know cortisol levels is all about stress. So taking the time, to just kind of enjoy the spring and going out in nature, those kinds of things can do wonders
mhm,
for your adrenal health. It can also boost your mood. I mean, spring increases serotonin and dopamine levels naturally, and more
mhm,
sunlight helps also lift our winter blues. So just the change that is happening in nature can also be beneficial for us. Again, it helps our mood, it helps emotional resilience, it helps gets us um, feel better. I know there's some people that suffer from what we call seasonal affective disorders here, or sad. I don't know if you guys say that phrase there in Germany or not, but
yeah,
they,
sometimes they call it winter depression,
okay, yeah,
Mhm,
yeah. And so just having more sun can help lift all of that. But
mhm,
then you look at it too from an immune function standpoint too. Syncing with spring also supports our lymphatic flow. I talked about this earlier on one of the other episodes with Michelle, who is one of our other recurring guests, who is all about movement and stuff. And we talked about spring and the lymphatic flow. The body detox, how spring, getting into that and syncing up with the changes in spring can help us also be able to detox our bodies, which I'd like to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But one of the other bigger things too is that a lot of people don't think about our circadian rhythm
mhm,
and how spring can affect that rhythm, and being able to do things to help sync our circadian rhythm with spring actually does so much for us, help us to be able to sleep better because it regulates our melatonin, cortisol cycle. So it helps us to control stress, our focus, our metabolism, all of that stuff. It's all just interconnected. And then the last thing I'm going to throw in here, because I know I'm chatting a lot, because I want to get back around to you, is also learning to eat seasonally, because springtime generally is lighter foods.
Mhm.
If you think about it, just we naturally started doing that, but that was a reason why springtime is it's lighter foods. It's like people tend to eat more sandwiches or salads, or just lighter fare as opposed to the heavier winter foods. So being able to lean into that by eating, greens and sprouts and herbs and things that are growing right now, that will not only help your natural detoxification and help your liver health, but it also encourages better digestion and, our microbiome and all kinds of other stuff. So all of these things that are happening in spring naturally, if we lean into that and we can sync our lifestyle with the energy of spring, including, lightening our food and rising with the sun and creating space for growth, we give our body and our minds exactly what they need to thrive. And so, that's the point that I wanted to bring forth from a modern wellness standpoint from all of that ancient stuff. So, do you have anything that you would like to add to that? I know I said a lot, but do you have anything you'd like to add to that about the power of seasonal alignment?
Yeah, it's very important to, I mean, I know when you have a modern lifestyle and you need to go to work or to university or whatever, oftentimes we can't say, oh, I just get up with the sun and go to bed with the sun. Of course, that's not possible for everyone.
Yeah.
However, the more you sync your lifestyle with the natural rhythms, the healthier you get, the more joy you feel,
Yeah.
the less stress you have. So oftentimes it's the simple things. Yes. And of course, going out, reconnecting with nature, spending time outside, even if the weather is bad. I mean, oftentimes in spring we have lots of rain as well, but don't stay in too much. Go out. We need this, our body. We are humans. We are natural. We are biological beings.
Yeah.
So we need the natural stimuli. We need the elements. We need to feel the elements.
No, I absolutely agree. So thank you for adding that extra input. So, yeah. So those of you listening, how do you feel the shift in spring in your body and your spirit? I mean, because we all feel it. It's about awareness. Some people more aware than others.
Mhm.
So, we're always trying to get people to be more aware of their bodies. So take this as a prompt to be more aware of your surroundings and the seasonal changes. How is that affecting you? How do you feel it in your body and spirit? So, inquiring minds want to know. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about spring cleaning for the soul. So, I love this topic point because we all talk about spring cleaning, okay? But spring cleaning isn't just for your home.
Mhm.
Okay. It's really good for us too. So let's talk about cleansing rituals. And we're going to talk a little bit about ancient rituals and modern rituals that can help us clear stuck energy.
Mhm.
Now, since Patricia is our resident ancient ritual person, I am going to let her start this part of the conversation off. So,
Mhm.
what are some practices that you know of that you recommend, or stuff from the ancient rituals that even we can do now
Mhm.
that that are good for cleaning the soul?
Yes. So I would like to start with so the rituals we do right now, the one like salt baths or fasting, grounding, and all of this, or even spring cleaning, we created those rituals back then in the ancient times It wasn't necessarily a ritual. It was just the way they were living, you know. So, for example, fasting. Yes, of course, a lot of people fast, especially in spring, which is so cool to get rid of all that, added up in your body over the winter and all this food you ate, the heavy food and stuff like that. However, back then, they did not need to fast because fasting, it was basically there was not enough food after the winter left. So the fasting wasn't voluntarily. However, it still was healthy to some degree if it was not a real famine for their body. So we kind of took it and turned it into a ritual because with our lifestyle, most people simply eat too much. So fast, So regarding salt baths, back in the ancient time, salt was oftentimes more expensive than gold, so nobody took it and to take a shower or a bath with it or so. However, those things are so important for our health, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. So I recommend, especially in spring, make room, fast, detox. And you can food fast, you can emotion fast or habit fast. So for example, I know a lot of people, they fast on social media, or they do not drink alcohol for a certain time, or they try to fast on negative thoughts or whatever. And it becomes a good new habit, especially if you practice it, for example, over 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, so that it really gets integrated into your body, mind, emotional system. So, and everything that has to do with fasting makes room. And we want to have room. We want to create room for all the new stuff, We are 1 year older than last year. So hopefully our awareness is also at a higher level. We are 1 year, not just older, but more matured. So we want to call in new habits, new chances, new possibilities, whatever it is. But we can't stuff them in if everything is still crowded. So anything that has to do with decluttering, detoxing, making room, this is what I recommend in the first place. Yes. And then, of course, depending on what type of person you are, feel and see and know what's good for you, what attracts you. So some people like to do smudgings, burning sage or whatever. Some people react allergic to it. They like to take a bath, and a salt bath, maybe with a couple of drops of essential oils, So it's not one practice or one ritual that fits all. Bring in your own feeling, your own experience, and stuff like that, However, first is always emptiness, and then cleaning, like the physical spring cleaning. We also clean our body with fasting, with detoxing the insides of our body, all the stuff that got stuck in our cells, and we try to get rid of it. We clean it out, we release it. And also our emotional body and our mind, try to get rid of those things that bothered you, maybe write them down, the bad experiences you had, write it down, say goodbye, and then, for example, burn it. Of course, there are so many rituals you can do that help you release, and then open yourself for the good new beginnings and opportunities and chances that life will bring to you.
I agree with all this. I personally love sage cleansing. I actually do that in my house.
Yes.
Quite a bit, more than just springtime. I mean, I literally, if I'm not doing it weekly, sometimes I'm doing it daily. I just love it. It's just kind of a good cleanse, every day kind of
Got
thing.
to.
So yeah, I mean, it's not the way I do it. I don't do the smudging because smudging takes a lot longer. I like sage incense, so I will usually have that going in my house a lot. So
Yeah,
I really like that one. But
yeah.
yeah, I love the the different things that you suggested, because those are all ways that you can bring some of the the ancient wisdom forward into modern times. And I know we keep talking about rituals, but for those of you who the word ritual is a little strong for you, you can just kind of think of it as habits,
What happened?
or or just the way things have been done.
Yeah.
Usually anything that is a ritual started someplace, and it's just something that somebody has done and they keep doing it and it gets passed along. Okay, so just kind of think of it that way. And to that I will add, on the modern wellness side of things, is doing things that not only cleanse your soul but also cleanse your body too. So springtime is always a really good time for me to do like a physical detox as well. So this is, I just generally do that because, as you said, it's like I probably didn't eat the best during the winter, or you eat heavier stuff in the winter. And once spring comes along, it's like, okay, I really kind of need to get the sludge out. So for me, springtime is always a really good time to do a good body detox, whatever that is for each of you people. I have my own, but for those of you, there are different ways to detox. And obviously, if you're interested in that, I'm happy to help you, but there's no one way to detox. Okay, is what I'm saying. So detoxing your body and your mind along with all of this is it's a really good thing to do. Patricia mentioned, writing down the stuff that you want to let go. That's a really good way of like detoxing your mind. And yeah, and I'm a firm believer too. It's like write it down and burn it. It's like it's a way. Now the burning doesn't necessarily mean anything ritual wise, other than it's just you letting it go, and it's setting that intention of I am done with this, I am letting it go. And I feel like sometimes our subconscious needs that little extra marker, if you will. And so this is like I
Show
really
sometimes a little show.
it's like, yeah, it's like, I really mean it this time. I am letting this go. So burning it is literally you letting that go. Or, I am a big believer in journaling, and we've talked about that a lot. Journaling to release the mental clutter. I mean, it's like just let it all out. Okay. If you write it down, you can get it out of here on the paper and then either file it away or whatever. But I want to add one other thing to that. And because springtime, a lot of people like to clean their houses during the spring. How about adding some intention setting along with the physical decluttering? Because there is a direct connection between physical clutter and mental clutter.
Yes. Yes.
So, how about setting intentions, and intentionally, when you're physically cleaning, when you're doing your spring cleaning in your home, you're setting your attention to also clean the mental clutter out as well, and connecting those two. Because sometimes when you add movement with the intention, it creates a bigger effect. So,
Yes.
yeah. So I encourage all of you who are listening to create a sacred cleaning moment, whatever that means for you. You can light a candle, play some music, and move in with intention, even if it's cleaning the house, because you can use cleaning the house, the movement of cleaning the house, as part of your ritual.
Yes.
When you're going in there and you're cleaning out the closets and everything, use that. Use that. Yes. It counts too.
And the decluttering, even if, for example, even if it's your closet, so where it's behind doors usually, but still all the things, they hold energy, they hold memories. And the fact that you declutter, that you give some stuff away, for example, it's also easier then to let go of some memories. So you create more mental space.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
agree.
tied together. Yeah.
All right. So now let's talk a little bit about rebirth as a personal and spiritual practice. Okay, so rebirth, I know it's a big word. So rebirth, so spring invites us to begin again. Okay, so when you think of rebirth, just think of it as starting over. It's beginning again.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so from the ancient wisdom perspective, how is rebirth seen through that lens?
Mhm.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So as I already mentioned, spring was kind of a rebirth because it wasn't for sure that you survived winter. And a lot of ancient cultures, a lot of ancient shamanic traditions, they even see every day or every day night as a rebirth. So,
Mhm.
and if, as you said, I love that you said rebirth might be too big of a word. So you can call it cycles, for example, or new
Yeah.
beginnings or whatever. So a lot of those traditions, especially the shamans, every day was a new chance, a new life, a new mini life, like tons of. So each year basically has 365 mini lives inside of it, or cycles.
Yeah.
So most of them, they did a blessing in the morning. They said thank you, or the intention. Thank you for this new day that I'm allowed to live. And in the evening, thank you for the day I was allowed to live. Something like that.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of small, short mini cycles, mini new, maybe new beginnings, new chances, new opportunities to do something different, to decide new. So like a reset, every day you have the chance to start anew. And of course, especially with the longer cycles,
Yeah.
every spring you can set a new intention, you can change your habits and stuff like that. And then there are the bigger cycles or new chapters in life we all go through, provided we get old. So the first big rite of passage is birth,
Mhm.
physical birth. Then we go through puberty, which in the ancient times meant, okay, now you are able to procreate,
Right.
So then the next one is to become an elder, if you reached that. And that was the reason why the wisdom and the elders were so highly regarded,
Yeah.
because it was very common to die at 20 or whatever,
Yeah.
So, and then the last huge transformation or rite of passage, of course, is death.
Yeah.
And most of them, they believed or aware of the knowledge, maybe the wisdom, that okay, it's like at night you go to sleep and then you come again in the next incarnation. And a lot of those ancient traditions, they believed that the babies who were born are basically ancestors coming back.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was basically the cycle, and that was also the reason why with those rites, the big rites of passage, they did celebrations, they did initiations. So,
Yeah.
for example, the first menstruation of a girl/woman, that
Yeah.
was a huge celebration.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. As an elder myself, I wish, today I wish today they celebrated elders more. So
Yes,
it's like
or at least whatever. Yeah, I can relate to that. Yes.
well, from a more modern naturopathic standpoint, I would add to this too that rebirth can also be um, rewriting your story,
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you will,
Yeah.
and changing out those limiting beliefs that have held you in the
Mm.
past. So being able to rewrite those beliefs and shifting it absolutely gives you the opportunity to
Mhm.
begin again.
Mhm.
And that's one way that you could have a rebirth
Mhm. Mhm.
in today's modern time and culture, if you will.
Yes.
Patricia mentioned, how different rites of passages were celebrated in ancient traditions. We don't do so much of that anymore. We may celebrate a birthday, but
Mhm.
we don't celebrate the milestones. And so I think
Yes.
we have lost the awe and the wonder
Mhm.
of recognizing the rights that we have gone through. I think we have
Yeah.
become so wrapped up in the stress of modern time that we just go, 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 and go.
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
don't even think about
Mhm.
the other stuff.
And oftentimes then it's just about, okay, now this is the next part of your life. And then it's about, what are you going to do next? What's your next big
Yeah,
goal in terms of achievement? So usually at birthdays or whatever, we don't take the time to just be and to reflect on the wisdom, for example, that we gained,
yeah,
or reflect on being. And then it's so, okay, you get a lot of presents or something like that. So it's more about consuming stuff, and but dive deep, and for thousands and thousands of years it has been imprinted on our souls, and we can feel even on a subconscious level, and not everyone is aware of that,
yeah,
but this feeling of emptiness, although we have all kinds of things, oftentimes comes from this, those traditions, those sacred celebrations, they are imprinted in our energy field.
yeah,
So it's so healthy to find some form to face inwards, reflect, be grateful, like the simple things in life, and honor the phase that you are about to move in, and honor the phase that you just went through.
yeah,
Reflect on it.
yeah, absolutely. And spring is a really good time to reflect on that
Mhm.
and to be able to honor that.
Mhm.
So my challenge for those who are listening is, what part of you is ready to be reborn this spring?
Mhm.
So think about that for a moment. What part of you is ready to be reborn? I know there's something. We all have something. We all have something that we want to change, or that we want to let go, or that we want to redo or reset, or however you want to look at it. And spring is the perfect time to look at that and start making that change, because the earth is changing. The earth is being reborn. The
Mhm.
spring is all around us. And if we piggyback on the energy of the earth
Mhm.
and nature,
Mhm.
we can utilize that energy for ourselves to also be
Mhm.
reborn and make the changes that we want to see in ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we absolutely can feel the energy of the earth. For those of you who are going, yeah, right, whatever, you absolutely can. It's about awareness. So if you take the time to become aware, you will understand that we can feel the energy of the earth. That's the reason why when springtime comes around, you get that burst of energy and you want to clean something. It's the natural energy of the earth that's coming up, that's springing forth, that's change. It's
Mhm.
bringing change. So utilize the energy of change that is naturally coming to make the changes that you want to. So, anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah, definitely. Mhm.
All right, so
Mhm.
now let's talk a little bit about empowerment. So we know that Patricia, it's all about empowerment. So she is absolutely going to love this segment. So let's talk about the role of ritual in claiming personal power and what makes rituals empowering. I'm going to let you take this particular section over. So go ahead.
Yeah. So rituals or practices, if that's a trigger word for you, the rituals, they they kick off something in your subconscious mind. And therefore, especially when you do a ritual or a sacred ceremony, whatever, the more focused and aware you set your intention about the outcome, about, especially in spring, about the new things, the more powerful it gets and the more momentum it creates for you, because it unlocks resources that are sleeping in your subconscious mind. And we know that the subconsciousness is so powerful.
Right.
So that's a great time to really, and you spoke to this already, to release or to rewrite your stories, to release outdated or even sabotaging beliefs, for example, and implement new ones that are supportive for you. Don't do a ritual just for the sake of the ritual. It's not a magic wand. After the ritual, of course, action must follow. So you need to take action in alignment and according to the intentions you set before.
Yeah.
So they need to go hand in hand. However, when you do so, it could be kind of a magic wand. So you can be very surprised what can happen.
Right.
You know? But everything, so it has a lot of moving parts. And you can't just do one, everything needs to follow each other in the right order.
Yeah.
So, and especially for spring, as we already talked about, first, it's all about cleaning out on
Right.
all levels, on all 4 levels. And then really take your time and reflect on it and make a plan, not a schedule, but more a plan or some future pacing. Okay, what do I want to experience? How do I want to feel? Where do I want to grow as a person? Where do I want to come into more alignment with myself? Where do I feel, for example, although I maybe can't name it yet, where do I feel that I have a special gift or some untapped potential? Just sit with yourself and journal it without editing, without censoring.
Right.
Just journal it or talk it into the recording app of your cell phone. So,
Yeah.
if a lot of thoughts come and it's too much to write it down. And then make an inventory of all those mental and emotional patterns that you want to release. And it's so powerful to write them down. And again, you can write down each and everything on a different sheet of paper, and then consciously burn them or tear them up and throw them away and say goodbye consciously to every single thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
love
then
that.
take action, take micro steps,
Yeah.
implement a new habit, even if it's very, very small, but on a daily base. And you will be surprised how this pulls you forward.
Yeah.
So, mhm.
No, I agree. I agree. And I kind of feel like too, empowerment is also about reclaiming yourself.
Yes.
I think we lose ourselves in life, whatever stage of life. We lose ourselves in our job, or we lose ourselves in our taking care of our kids, or we lose ourselves in our home, or we lose ourselves with this. We lose ourselves. And empowerment to me is about reclaiming yourself, reclaiming the self. And all of the things that you just talked about are ways to reclaim ourselves. And I'd like to add to that, for the modern times, if you will, some other things, like grounding practice that helps empower you to reclaim yourself. It helps you to be. Okay. You already mentioned movement. Movement is really good for activating all of
Mhm.
these changes that you're trying to do. We talked a little bit earlier. I touched on it a little bit, and some of you may or may not have picked up on that. But when you combine movement with intention, it magnifies it. Okay, so using movement along with this
Mhm.
just makes it that much more, and movement can be anything from like an actual like practice like tai chi or yoga, or
Mhm.
it can be unpracticed like dancing, or as I said, cleaning your house. But it can also be breath work. Breath work is movement too. I love breath work. I know a lot of people get lost in this whole thing about breath work because it's like, oh, it's so complicated. It's not. But even breath work, is a movement. But when you combine that with the intention, it
Mhm.
just blows it up. And then I also love, you've already mentioned journaling, but I also love along with that are affirmations of declaration of your identity.
Mhm.
And you can use, I know a lot of people, affirmations don't work for a lot of people because affirmations require a certain level of belief.
Mhm.
And sometimes people are just repeating words and they don't actually believe it. That's the reason why sometimes it doesn't work.
Mhm.
But if you use the affirmations along with your journaling, and because journaling is also movement, and you think about it,
Mhm. Mhm.
it could help kind of make things sink in a little more. And you never know, it might just work for you. But even just, looking at yourself in the mirror and
Mhm.
starting off with simple, I am,
Mhm. Mhm.
can go a long way to reclaiming yourself and empowering yourself.
Mhm.
And I encourage, those that are listening to use the change in the springtime, this renewal energy, to also renew themselves and take it as an opportunity to reclaim themselves
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
renew themselves.
Yes, yes. And when it comes to empowering also for some people is a huge word and it intimidates. So sometimes
Mhm.
start with I am ready for, or I allow myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to throw another modality out there. And if you're listening, you can go look it up. There's lots of information out there that I find that works really well for empowerment, particularly when people have these blocks that tends to prevent the whole using affirmations and I am, and what you just said kind of, made
Mhm.
me think about that, is tapping. Tapping is really good for that. So EFT, tapping.
Mhm.
And many of the tapping statements start off with, even though I blah, 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 I
Mhm.
love and accept myself. Or even though blah, blah,
Mhm. Mhm.
I accept this. And so sometimes it's
Mhm.
about acceptance and
Mhm.
starting small and recognizing I'm not perfect. And yeah, I do have a block here, but I accept that about myself.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
that's a really good
Yes.
first
Yes.
step
Yeah.
into making very powerful change.
And that's actually probably the biggest block for people who have problems with, for example, affirmations or other kinds of empowerment work. Um, it's not about suppressing or denying the problem or the issue, that you have.
Yeah,
It's about, okay, it is what it is. I acknowledge it's there. Okay.
yeah,
However, I can move on, you know?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And sometimes that's where you have to start. You have to start with I accept.
Yes.
It's like, it's like, no,
Yeah.
it's not perfect. No, I'm
Yeah.
feeling this way and I'm feeling that way, but I accept that about
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. And
And once
then
you start to accept, you can make the change.
right. Yes. So there is one technique. It's not tapping, but it has some elements of tapping in it. It comes also. My Huna teacher developed this technique, and yes, it starts with, okay, this is the issue. I accept it, and that can change, and that's a keyword, and that is
Yeah,
so powerful, And this can change.
yeah,
It's so
yeah,
powerful. Yeah, and then you
exactly.
start the process of the tapping certain points, and most people immediately feel changes
Hmm.
and shifts.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love tapping. I use that as part of my practice with many of my clients. Again, as we said, sometimes affirmations don't work for some people because they have these blocks. And I have found that tapping is really good for
Mhm,
bringing the walls down and getting past some of those blocks, which can open up for other work to be done,
mhm. Yeah.
particularly in the realm of empowerment. And I have found that empowerment in itself is a big part
Mhm,
of making change in a person, not only mentally and emotionally, but physically as well.
mhm.
So I feel like that's a really big piece. So, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
And sometimes the gap between where we are right now and where we want to be is just too big.
Yeah.
And that creates resistance or blocks. So, chunk it down and start small with, I'm open now. This can change.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So now, as we always do, we talk about all these things and then we talk about how you get to integrate it into what you're doing now. So let's talk a little bit about integrating the ancient wisdom into modern life. So,
Mhm.
how can we bring these beautiful traditions of the past into our fast paced modern lives in a respectful and effective way? Let's talk about that. So, again, I'm going to let Patricia take the lead on this because she is our resident ancient wisdom person. So, I'm going to let her start off. So, can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of, like intention or reverence or relationship, whatever, how do we bring forward the wisdom of the ancients into modern time
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
make it work for us?
Yes, yes. So first of all, very important is if it's a true ancient practice or ritual or some sacred ceremony, whatever, you have to be very mindful and respectful
Okay.
because a lot of those rituals, practices, whatever, kind of were taboo. They were only reserved to the high priestess or the shaman or the
Mhm.
healer or whatever. Because, and it was not because it was forbidden for the people, it was to protect, you know. Some
Mhm.
some of those rituals are very powerful and you have to be able to deal with those energies.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why they were reserved to people who were highly trained, who lived a
Mm.
certain lifestyle even back then.
Yes.
So, and this is something that I see, sadly enough, a lot in the industry. And I know that most of the people who offer this, they mean well and they don't know better. However, I mean, it's like sometimes it's like taking a very powerful medicine.
Mhm.
You don't take meds just for the sake of taking meds. You have to be careful with the dose. Is it the right
Yeah.
thing? Are there what's the word,
Contraindicated.
contraindications? Yeah, and it's the same with the rituals or sacred practices. So please be very aware. If you are not sure, and honor them. If you are not sure, do your thorough research and ask a real shaman, for example, not a
Yeah.
person who only did one a weekend course or whatever. So yeah, because most of them out there. So so please don't overstep a boundary. If in doubt, pick something else. That's my tip. So otherwise, when you are in this, create your own sacred space, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that you do an entire weekend or whatever.
Mm.
So you can claim your smaller spots during the day, make yourself comfortable, don't just squeeze it in.
Yeah.
And especially afterwards, you need some time to integrate.
Right.
So find your ideal time slot in your day when you really can, yeah, just have some time to relax afterwards, or to take a walk or go to sleep, whatever it is. So that's important. And then there are so many practices. We already talked about some of them
Mm,
today. Pick the one where you feel most comfortable with, your soul is calling for. Carry it out with appreciation, with gratitude, with intention, and without any attachment of the outcome. That's also important, because sometimes we do not go directly to an outcome. Life oftentimes
right.
goes in. So, yeah. So responsibility and respect is maybe the most important thing. And be aware that it's not a magic wand, it's not a crook or anything. You need to take aligned and inspired action after that. But otherwise, it really adds to your life and to your well-being,
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
tangible and the intangible. And that's so important, I think. It
Yeah.
slows us down in a positive way.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. You talked about how some of the rituals were only done by certain people because of the big energies, and that made me start thinking about how. So I do some energy work as part of what I do,
Mhm.
and which a lot of the work that I do is like helping people. Remove negative energy and changing negative beliefs, helping them
Mhm.
get rid of those.
Yeah.
Okay. It's another conversation for another day, so I don't want to go too deep into that. Anybody who's interested in that, you can like contact me and I'll be happy to
Mhm.
tell you more about it. But so many times there are people that try to do those things for themselves, or utilizing someone who is not fully trained in that, and they don't understand how big those energies are, and
Yes.
and how once you start a certain kind of work, you need to see it through. Otherwise, it can
Oh, yes.
imbalance you even more.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important for people to understand that when they're looking at things, to do, ritual or practice wise. That being said, I'd like to offer some simple rituals that probably aren't going to have the big energies like that could potentially cause those kinds of issues. Okay. So the first one, believe it or not, drinking tea mindfully is a really good one. Okay. If you think about it, way back when, and even like in some places like Japan, the tea the
Yes.
tea there is a tea ritual. There is a ritual for preparing and drinking the tea.
Mhm.
Okay. So even drinking tea mindfully can be a good ritual. Okay, it helps you to ground yourself, to become aware of things. You've probably heard of mindful eating. It's the same kind of thing. It's like chew your food. It's like recognize the taste. What is it, and those kinds of things. When you're taking the moment to be mindful of what you're eating, it slows things down. It increases your digestibility because you end up chewing more, and so
Mhm.
all of those things have these benefits that you will see down
Yes.
the road. Walking barefoot in nature, that's also a really good, simple one. Okay. There
Yes.
is something to just putting your feet on the ground that just does wonders for you. Now, of course, if you're allergic to grass, walking on grass is not going to be good for you. Okay. So don't go walk on the grass if you're allergic to grass. But things like that. If you can't walk barefoot in nature, go walk still in nature. Just being aware of your surroundings. That's something that's really good. Um,
Mhm.
Journaling. We talked about journaling before. We talk about journaling a lot. I am a huge proponent of journaling
Mhm.
because journaling is a really good way to express emotion and get negative energy out without a whole lot of effort other than writing it down. And
Mhm.
if you're one of those ones who doesn't like to write, you can also doodle. Okay, you can doodle in your journal instead of write in your journal. Doodling is great. Okay, so doodling. And then I like to offer what I call the 5-minute daily ritual. Okay. And it includes 1 minute of breath, 2 minutes of gratitude, and 2 minutes of visualization. So basically, the breath helps ground you in who you are, where you are.
Mhm.
Gratitude, you start practicing gratitude, things shift for you. Okay. I think a lot of people can make a huge change in their lives just being grateful and finding something to express gratitude about.
Mhm.
Even when things are going wrong, there's always something that you can be grateful for, even if it's just to have air to breathe. Okay. There's
Mhm.
always something to be grateful for. And then visualization. Visualization is basically just thinking about what it is that you really want. Where do you want to go from here? What do you see for yourself? Just taking 5 minutes out of your day to do that can make such a huge difference in your life. So, what ritual will you begin this spring? What is it that you want to change? All right, so we've come to the end of our time. I am going to let Miss Patricia here have the final word. So, what would you like to leave us with today?
Hey, so first I have one remark on what you just said about the
Okay.
visualization. Visualizations are memories of the future. I
Ah,
love that
I love
saying.
that. Yes.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Can let that sink in
Yeah,
and
I'm gonna have to start using that. I love that.
yeah,
Memories of the future.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. So to sum this up, the more you are in sync, the more you are honoring not just the seasonal changes and nature's rhythms, also honoring your own rhythms, not just the big
Mhm.
ones, but every day we go through the rhythms, our circadian rhythms, how we feel in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, whatever. So really take time to connect to yourself, feeling blissful in this moment, and be aware of the changes and of the things that stay the same, and yeah, get in get in sync with nature and with yourself, and
Okay.
your life will change, or that's a huge part of your overall well-being, and it's the
Yeah.
simple things. Yeah. Hmm.
Well, thank you. And as we wrap up the spring, the spring season. Well, actually, spring is still going on, but the springtime shows for the month. This was a great way I felt like to end this particular segment of shows about the spring equinox and change and so on and so forth. So thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. So, to those of you who are listening and watching, remember, spring is a sacred invitation to awaken something new inside of you, whether it's through an ancient ritual or it's through a modern practice. You have the power to begin again.
Hmm.
Okay, the power is with you.
Hmm.
That being said, I do have a couple of resources that I will drop when I get a moment, including the spring ritual guide and a new meditation that I just recorded called "Awaken the Energy of Spring" that I think you guys will love. It's something you can do in less than 5 minutes, so I'm all about quick stuff. I will drop the links in the comments when I get a chance. If you don't see them, please reach out to me. I'm happy to send them directly to you. So that is it for today's show. Join us again. Again, Patricia is on with me every fourth Friday of the month. But the other weeks, you can catch me with some of the other recurring guests. And on months where we have 5 weeks, 5 Fridays, you can see all of us together, which we will have one of those coming up soon. So that is it for today. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, remember, wellness isn't a destination, it's your daily journey. So stay grounded, stay open, and stay sacred. Bye. This episode is brought to you by Living Naturally for Life and Women Unlimited International. Comment, like, subscribe.